Hello class, welcome to session 5. Let's get our learning brains feeling alive. Your lecture's Dr. Sade, here to guide the way through deep learning for intrusion detection today. We're exploring data science, learning something new. With Dr. Sade and APU, the future's clear for you. Exploring data science, learning something new. Your guide is Dr. Sade, the future's clear for you.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the heart of cybersecurity with deep learning. In today's session, we're building the foundation for our digital defense systems. Our two main topics, data preprocessing and dimensionality reduction, are essentially our toolkit for taking raw, messy information and turning it into something powerful and usable for our detection models. Think of it as preparing an investigation before the real detective work begins. Let's become data detectives. When we analyze a dataset, we're looking for clues, which we call attributes. For our intrusion detection system, these attributes are things like spatial coordinates, time, and environmental factors. The most crucial piece is the label. The label is the answer we are trying to predict, in this case, burned or not. This is how we teach the machine to learn, by giving it the clues and the right answer. Imagine training a puppy to fetch. That's supervised machine learning. First, we show it labeled examples. Collect and label. Then we split our examples into a practice set, train dataset, and a final test dataset. The common 70-30 or 80-20 split ensures the model gets enough practice without memorizing the answers. We pass the practice set to the classifier, and then we use the final test to see how well it learned to predict new, unseen cases. Here's a crucial distinction that separates a good project from a great one: outcomes versus outputs. What's the difference between doing well and being successful? An output is the technical score, while an outcome is the real-world impact. How do we know if our model is a genius or just lucky? We need a report card. This section is all about evaluating models, the language we use to measure and compare performance. Let's clarify this. The outcome is the why, the big picture, the money, the safety, the business impact. The output is the how, the technical metrics like accuracy or error rates. You tell the CEO the outcome, you use the output to communicate with your fellow data scientists. To make this concrete, let's look at the airline example. A good output is a low classification error. But the real outcome? A reduction in safety incidents and costs. Always remember to connect your technical output to a meaningful, tangible outcome. The model output metrics are the language of performance. To speak fluently about machine learning, you need to know these key terms. We'll break them down into two families: regression, predicting a number, and classification, predicting a category. Why bother with metrics? They are your compass throughout the entire model lifecycle. They help you compare and select the best model, successfully deploy the model, ensure ongoing performance monitoring to keep the model sharp. When do we use which dataset? The validation set is like practice exams to help you study and fine-tune your model strategy. The test set is the final lockdown exam. You use it only once to get the model's final, honest score. Let's start with the first family, regression. If your model predicts a continuous number, like the temperature or a financial forecast, you need these error metrics to measure how far off your prediction was. Your data is rarely perfect. It's like having gaps in a puzzle. Missing values are a big problem. We have three main treatments. Deletion. We can delete features, columns, with more than 30% missing values, or delete all instances, rows, with missing values. Direct estimation. This requires prior knowledge to make an accurate, informed guess. Imputation. The most common fix, where you fill in the missing spots with the mean or median for numbers, or the most frequent value for categories. First up, mean squared error, MSE. The squared part makes this a drama queen. It exaggerates big mistakes. If your model makes a massive error, MSE will shout about it, making it popular due to its sensitivity to large errors. Next, the calm and collected mean absolute error, MAE. It's more forgiving and offers robustness to outliers. It tells you the average distance your prediction was from the truth, making it very easy to interpret and explain in a real-world context. Mean absolute percentage error, MAEP. The key here is percentage. It gives you error in a format everyone understands. But be careful. Because you are dividing by the actual target value, it becomes sensitive to low target values, numbers close to 0. Why have two different metrics? It depends on what you value. If a single huge mistake is catastrophic, like a safety breach or a financial meltdown, you want the severe penalty of MSE or RMSE. If you prefer steady, average performance, use MAE. It's about what kind of error penalty best aligns with your business needs. The main tool for classification is the confusion matrix. Don't let the name confuse you. It's simply a table that perfectly shows how your model is confused, which things it got right, and which it mixed up. Everyone loves accuracy. It's the most popular and easiest to understand. But it can be a trick. In the heart disease example, a model that predicts no heart disease every time can be 99.4% accurate if only 0.6% of patients have the disease. This is the danger of class imbalance. Simple accuracy can be misleading. This is where the confusion matrix shines. It breaks down the 4 important numbers we need to truly evaluate a classification model. Let's label the 4 corners of this matrix. It's a simple grid of what we predicted versus what the actual truth was. We'll focus on the 4 key outcomes: true positives, true negatives, false positives, and false negatives. The true positive rate, TPR, also known as recall or sensitivity, is a safety net. It asks, out of all the actual positives that should have been caught, how many did we correctly identify? This is critical for catching defects or diseases. The false positive rate, FPR, is the false alarm rate. It asks, out of all the things that were actually negative, how many did we incorrectly classify as a positive? A high FPR means a lot of wasted time checking false alarms. Precision is about efficiency. When your model says something is positive, a defect, a disease, how often is it actually right? If your precision is low, your model is often shouting flag when there is no flag. The confusion matrix isn't just for yes-no problems. For a multi-class problem, like classifying an image as cat, dog, or bird, the matrix gets bigger. This helps us see which specific classes the model is struggling to differentiate, and we calculate metrics for each class separately. Beyond the matrix, we have 2 powerful curves that help us visualize performance across all possible thresholds, the ROC curve and the precision recall curve. The ROC curve is all about trade-offs. It plots the true positive rate, your safety net, against the false positive rate, your false alarm rate, as we adjust the model's threshold. It's a great way to visualize the balance between sensitivity and specificity. How is this curve actually drawn? It starts with your model outputting a probability for the positive class. To draw the curve, you must iterate through every possible value between 0 and 1. At each one of those values, you set it as a threshold, calculate the resulting TPR and FPR, and then plot the point. Connecting all those points creates the full ROC curve, a comprehensive map of your model's capability. AUROC, area under the ROC curve, is the single-number summary of the whole curve. The higher the number, closer to 1, the better the model is at separating the 2 classes. A perfect prediction would have a TPR of 1 and an FPR of 0. The precision recall PR curve is the secret weapon for problems with high-class imbalance. Unlike the ROC curve, it doesn't factor in true negatives, focusing only on the performance of the positive class. This provides a much clearer, more honest picture of your model's value when dealing with rare events. So, your model score isn't perfect. Don't panic. Debugging poorly performing models is a core skill. We're going to look at the top 5 places where things go wrong, so you know exactly where to look for a fix. This is your troubleshooting checklist. Start at the top. Problem framing and metric selection. Did you pick the right goal and the right metric? Data quantity and quality. Is your data clean, complete, and do you have enough of it? Feature selection. Are your inputs useful? Model fit. Did you use the right algorithm or configure it correctly? Inherent error. Sometimes the problem is just too complex for any model to fully describe. That brings us to the end of our deep dive into model evaluation. Take a moment to review the key concepts we covered, like the distinction between outcomes and outputs, the 3 regression metrics, and the 4 key values and the confusion matrix. Okay, great. I'll see you in the next session.